Hello, I'm Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate. For more than 30 years, I've been helping people find and buy the right businesses the right way. I'm not a business broker. I don't sell businesses. Most of my presentations are aimed at people searching for and buying small and mid-sized businesses. Brokers, owners, sellers, advisors, they also tune in because they want to see how the best informed buyers are thinking and acting. And what you're going to hear today is for everybody, the buyers and the sellers and their advisors. You're going to hear me talking from the buy side, and I'm going to be talking to Calvin Hughes of Paladin Capital Advisors. He generally serves the other side of the table, the owners and sellers. We're going to discuss why sellers and buyers of small and mid-sized businesses create competition and how they cope with it and how they beat it or avoid it. The reality is some sellers love business buyer competition, and it's not so much for searchers and buyers. We're going to delve into that, so stay tuned. Cal, talk to us about your advisory niche.
Today, the majority of my work is transactional, sell side most often, buy side as well, including variations on transactions such as management buyouts, employee share ownership plans, family succession, equity and debt capital raising, as well as management consulting, board governance, and valuations today. So in a nutshell, Paladin Capital Advisors and myself is driving and monetizing value in private business.
Well, you're singing my tune, because on the buyer side, one of the things that we do not like is coping with owners and sellers who don't have a clue. They waste our time, they waste their time, and generally we don't get a done deal. So the better owners and sellers prepare, better for us. But let's talk about competition. Why? Why are these small business owners wanting to create competition amongst their buyers?
Well, I think most people would say that it's to get the highest price. And that's an obvious answer. I mean, both parties, both counterparties, they want to do well. That's just a given. The trick in doing deals, as I'm sure you know, Ted, is to close that gap, right? Sellers want to get the best price and terms. Buyers want to buy on the lowest price and the best terms for themselves. It's all valid. But if you dig a little deeper, there are some other very, very important reasons that actually have come to play that affected the deals that I've done. And these are driven by the sellers in this case. So one such reason is often to find the best fit buyer by having a choice of who to sell to. And sometimes price isn't necessarily the deciding factor. I've had a situation some years ago where there was a wide range of interested buyers. The proposed purchase price for the enterprise value ranged from a low of 1.2 to 3.6 million, very wide range. And in fact, the seller didn't take the highest, actually took one at the high twos, let's just say that. And so the reasons for that was because there were other contributing factors, such as how long it would take the deal to get done, how difficult the due diligence process was expected to be. And this override a very significant portion of the purchase price. So a lot of people may not consider that. Yes, price is important, but other things come to play. So another reason, of course, is some sellers are very interested in the legacy that their business carries forward on, and they want to see that in good hands. We go through a process, what I call price discovery, and that's a process of finding that best fit buyer. And it gives a lot of peace of mind to sellers knowing that with a well-run process, they understand what the market is capable of and they get to pick and choose.
So searchers, buyers, you need to listen to that sentence or that last paragraph again. This is exactly how we position ourselves to be first choice. I'll get into that a little more later. But if you can appeal to those things the owner's looking for, it's a way to beat the buyer competition. Let's talk about confidentiality. And I'm thinking about sellers. When they're creating buyer competition, every time they let a searcher in the door, they let the nose under the tent, it can slow the process down. It means their sensitive information is out more. How do sellers protect themselves if they're going to try to create buyer competition? I'm talking healthy buyer competition.
Yeah, of course. Well, confidentiality is paramount. And it's like the dictum that you may hear in the healthcare sector, do no harm. An owner, a seller may have built their business over 10, 20, 30 years or more. It might be intergenerational. And the last thing you want is damage to the business. So we all know the reasons for confidentiality, but the question now becomes, how do you handle it? So clearly and obviously, one of the things you have to do is have prospective buyers sign a non-disclosure agreement. But that's not sufficient in and of itself, because certainly nobody wants to have a breach. Nobody wants to go in a lawsuit. It's really just not the place you want to go. So qualifying prospective buyers is paramount. Qualifying means, of course, not only do they have the capability financially, but they have the capability management-wise, and they also have the capability to run the business. So there has to be a very realistic prospect that they could become a genuine suitor for that business. So in a deal, of course, time is not the seller's friend. You want to work with the right people, to not waste resources, time, and attention, while at the same time trying to get a suitable number of interested buyers. And that selection process becomes a very important part of sustaining and hopefully ensuring confidentiality. But once you've given out information, it's out. You have to rely on that prospective buyer and their team to respect that. So if in doubt, don't disclose at that early stage, especially what you don't want someone to know. So it could be a sensitive price list, margins, certain key customers, know-how, processes, perhaps even certain key staff. And so one of the benefits of managing the process is to portion out the information as appropriate at each stage in the deal process. That may not be as familiar with some of your viewers. Perhaps it is, I don't know, but certainly being aware that you can think carefully about how to disseminate the information, it really, really helps. Which also ties into the fact that when you have well-prepared sellers and their team, a good deal room, etc., you can manage that process more carefully. And I would like to add to this topic a little bit. Often a question is, what happens if a competitor takes an interest, or should we even approach a competitor? And that's a topic unto itself that perhaps we could explore another time.
You know, one of the things that I tell searchers is think about the relationship that's going to evolve with a seller, an owner, sometimes a business broker. Think of it like unpeeling an onion in layers. One of the biggest mistakes that I see searchers do all the time is they hand an owner or a seller or a broker a list of due diligence questions, and they say, fill that out and come back to me. You know, that's just a little too much and too early. So I like what you said about carefully disclosing. So let's just say that the seller, with your help, knows how to vet the buyer, knows how to process the buyer, but you want buyer competition, I would think, from the sell side. I mean, if I sold a business, I definitely would like to see more than one buyer looking at it. What kind of tactics are working for you to get buyer attention, let's say searcher attention? And is there any downside? What kind of adverse reactions are you trying to avoid? And I want you to talk about this, Cal, in the terms of the present pandemic, in the financial crisis. I want you to remember back to the Great Recession. Let's look at the big picture here. So our interview doesn't have a time problem. What you're going to say, how you generate buyer competition, is good to do anytime.
I'll try to answer as thoroughly as I can. And if I miss an aspect of it, just remind me here. But I'm going to begin with the basics. So let's just say to create buyer competition, there's on a fundamental basis, two parts. So the first part is preparation. And as I call it, it's not location, as in real estate, it's preparation. What does that allow us to do? So if we think carefully, and it's a distinguishing factor of Paladin I found over these many years that often sets us aside from other investment bankers and perhaps brokers. Paladin invests a great deal of time and resources at the front end to do due diligence on our clients who are selling to make sure that they're ready. Because if you think about it, if we engage, we get exclusivity under a letter of intent, and the buyer is going through that due diligence thoroughly, and we expect them to do so, and they turn up problems such as accounting errors or numerous other possibilities. At that point, the price doesn't go up, it goes down, or it falls off entirely. So to create competition, you need to be extremely well prepared, not only just doing due diligence and populating a deal room, But we also are known for our extensive confidential information memorandums. So should a buyer get through the initial stages, we have the confidence of their confidentiality, there's qualification all the way around, we'll often release this confidential information memorandum, otherwise called a SIM in the industry. And it's like a book. Now, this isn't a 10 or 15 page book. It's not an introductory teaser or an introductory PowerPoint. What it's meant to be is to facilitate the due diligence at the earliest, more serious stage of the process. So some of the businesses that Paladin has worked with are not only companies with a great story, but also can be quite complicated. Worldwide sales and just numerous things, which at this point I won't get into specific examples. And if you can imagine, nobody likes to read long books. However, when you are doing your due diligence and you're coordinating with your accountant, your acquisition team, perhaps even legal, it's an indispensable tool when people want to spend the time. Okay, so that's the first part of that answer. The next part is to decide how you want to market. And it could be very simple. You just create a list, you do your research in databases and with the seller, and you'll say you've got 10, 20, 100, 200, 300, and you'll go out and you'll reach them. So Paladin doesn't typically just blast it out on a website. That is an effective one for certain types of businesses, but on some more unique businesses where we're looking for a strategic buyer, we'll pick up the phone and we'll start calling the right people to get them engaged, to ask if they'd like to see a teaser, and then it goes from there. So critically, managing your prep, managing your marketing in concert with the seller, because you don't want to reach out to certain parties that may not be appropriate, and encourage that process to bring the prospective buyers forward with expressions of interest, and perhaps then we can move forward depending on how things flow from there. Now, I know that you had mentioned perhaps comment on this process in the pandemic situation. It's fundamentally no different. Pandemic, of course, adds a new layer of due diligence and consideration to what the cash flows may look like in the future, and this certainly needs to be brought to bear. Depending on how sensitive the business is to the pandemic circumstances, it may change certain aspects, again, of how due diligence is conducted, as in perhaps meeting staff or perhaps even vetting out certain customers of the seller, et cetera, et cetera. So more sensitivities, but I don't believe that it fundamentally changes the approach to a successful transaction offering in the market.
Can you show us an example of how the buyer competition worked, and it worked in the seller's favor?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So when I alluded to at the beginning, we had actually quite a good process, and after whittling down many prospective buyers, we had about 5 that closed in on more serious discussions and wanted to advance with a letter of intent. And we had a fairly wide range, as I mentioned. It had gone initially from 1.2 to about 3.6 million in this case. And as things tightened up, it was running between about 2 million and 3.6. And just again, given circumstances, the seller chose a particular buyer that wasn't the highest priced, but fit their needs in other ways extremely well. And they were able to close the deal. I can give another example of one even further years ago, and perhaps this might be more in concert with what you're trying to point out in terms of higher price. There was, the seller was in Calgary, there was one in Winnipeg, there was one buyer in Calgary, and one in Vancouver. So that's all Western Canada. And these reached strategic buyers that were in the industry and wanted to take a look at buying my client, the seller. And it was quite interesting. The one in Calgary had the least experience and perhaps the most doubtful resources to be able to close, even though they were willing to pay the price. It was just questionable whether you wanted to tie up. What I mean by tie up is that quite often when the parties will sign a letter of intent, there's an exclusivity clause because, of course, the costs and resources to go through the next stage of detailed due diligence and prep of the formal documentation can be quite expensive. So more than not, you're offering exclusivity with the signing of the letter of intent. So the Calgary one was kind of pushed to the back a bit. The one from Vancouver, they had a representative working with them, and this individual was both a lawyer and an accountant and was representing the buyer. And I do remember that he called me up, very nice man, very professional, and for about 40 minutes he told me all the reasons why, that the price should be X, and cash flows this, and so on, and customers that, and staff this, and the economy that. And he says, well, I think it's probably worth about this much. And after 40 minutes, he says, what do you think? And I said, well, that's very well thought out. It's very reasoned. I said, I do understand, and I do appreciate you telling me all about this, but I have someone who's willing to pay twice what you are. What would you like to do? Needless to say, the party from Winnipeg bought it.
Oh man! Oh, I know. I've seen them too. Let's talk about who belongs on a business owner's advisory team and when. When should owners begin thinking that sooner or later they're going to want to get out of that business? Who are the team members? What are they supposed to do when?
Excellent question, and I'm happy to talk to it. I'm going to qualify it first, right? Because you can have any number of people on the deal team, but it depends on the business, the circumstances surrounding the deal. You're going to begin working, hopefully, with your M&A advisor or broker, as the case may be, because the work that's done in the preparation phase, the due diligence phase, the populating of the due diligence room, and understanding more deeply the enterprise value. You don't need to bring in a large team unless there's serious questions surrounding accounting practices, legal matters perhaps, or outstanding litigation, human resources, or any number of things. Now, with that said, that's your beginning point. So for instance, Paladin was privileged to represent at one time a vertically integrated company that did mining, manufacturing, and distribution around the world. Now, the mineral deposits were quite extensive, and we had to hire a specialist in that area to provide the value estimates for the reserves. And so that's an example of a special situation where, in terms of creating that preparedness, that readiness to present yourself, you would call in certain experts. And in this case, it worked out very, very well. So in terms of who else on your team, most typically you'll have an accountant and a lawyer, right? And these are essential folks to have as you get through this process. And it may be that, for instance, you'll prepare, you'll normalize statements, but there still may be deeper questions about certain policies in the accounting, what's followed here, such as inventory or CapEx or whatever. And having your staff accountant or your company external accountant ready to say, this is how we handled it in a very thorough way is essential. So it's that readiness to be ready to present oneself. Now, I'm going to put a little qualification in here, and this is important, such that when you get to the point of actually getting the deal done, so you're moving through due diligence, remember, time is typically not your friend. You want to move through this swiftly, and you're getting to the point where you may need to be getting some tax advice in terms of how to structure the deal to optimize the cash proceeds from the transaction. Then you might need a tax accountant or a tax lawyer. The internal accountant or the company external accountant may or may not have the right level of skills in this regard. It is a highly specialized area. Likewise, securities lawyers, if you're dealing mostly in share deals or perhaps asset deals. So what I'm trying to say is that who to include on your deal team depends on that situation and the complexity that's involved. Because you can have trusts, family members, many shareholders, all kinds of situations that need to be dealt with. In one example, there was a very significant deal that we did. It was about a 40-year-old company, and two of the most senior owners unfortunately passed away. They were well into their 80s or 90s at that time before the deal got done. And at that point, their beneficiaries realized on the shares and then had to bring in their own experts to make sure things were managed correctly from the estate side. So I realize these are fairly extensive examples, but I think the point is across that the circuit, you got your basics, your accountant, your lawyer, depending on if they're deal people or they're just internal, either both are needed. And then from there, you have to decide what's required to successfully produce the deal under that situation.
Okay, Cal, thanks. I only have one more question, and I'm going to go back to it because on the buy side, a lot of searchers and buyers think that they're going to have to overpay for businesses if there's buyer competition. So go back to it. In the fewest words, are buyers going to overpay for businesses or maybe agree to terms that totally don't favor the buyers if they're competing with another buyer?
I certainly think it's possible if they don't have as much experience or qualified advisory as they need. It's certainly possible. However, most of the buyers that we find ourselves dealing with are very disciplined, and they have their rationale, their investment thesis, which says to them, they're not going to reveal to us, what they're capable and prepared to do. So it can happen, but it may not. Now, the price, of course, can vary tremendously. And I gave the example earlier, but here's another one. And you can tell me, Ted, if you think there's a winner and a loser. So let's say this, it's an actual example. So a company we sold many years ago sold for $25 million. The owners were very happy. They thought it was good. The buyer took the sales from 25 million to 40 million in 18 months because they were a great strategic buyer. And they ended up reselling it for much, much higher. Is there a winner and a loser there? The sellers realized that maybe they could have made more, but they were happy. They took their money and went on to do other wonderful things and made even more money, to be quite honest. And the buyer, they won too. So it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It actually can be good for both parties. And I think that's counterintuitive. It's certainly one of the ideal outcomes.
And you know what, searchers, this is Ted again. Listen to that again, because sometimes searchers lose deals because they're trying to get every marble on the playing field. And time, not only is time and money, but as Cal says, it's not your friend. So do the best deal you can do, but get the deal. Okay, Cal, how can people get in touch with you?
I think the best way is just to look me up on LinkedIn. You can go Calvin Hughes, Paladin Capital Advisors, and I'll pop up. Thank you very much, Ted.
If you're trying to search for a business, learn how the pros do it. I wrote a book, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy. And if you're already in due diligence or about to because you think you found that winner, get my other book, How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. So folks, you're going to save time, you're going to save money, you're going to make better deals. You just have to do what the savviest way searchers and buyers do. And you've got to listen to what Calvin Hughes said. Do what the savviest owners and sellers do. Hey, I'm available, so's Cal. We can help you deploy the tactics we talked about today. Go to my website, partneroncall.com. I'm Ted Leverette, the business buyer advocate with Partner on Call Network. Thanks for listening and be safe out there.